Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elie Pinta, and I'm a fourth-year PhD student at the Sorbonne University in Paris, France. I'm going to take you to South Greenland, then, where the Norse people settled during the European Middle Ages, during the year 1000 to 1500 AD. And I'm going to talk a little bit about circulation management and use of wooden materials. But most precisely, I'm going to talk to you about the project I was very happy to have since last summer, and that project was founded by the WWD Foundation. So thank you very much for that. First, I will talk about the Norse settlements for those of you who don't really know these people. Then the study of wooden artifacts and the couple of first results I had recently published, and then the isotope project that was founded by the WWD Foundation. So North Greenland, we're talking about the southern tip of the island, two main regions called the eastern and the western settlements. Norse are Scandinavian settlers. They're coming from Scandinavia, Norway, Denmark, and the North Atlantic Islands, and they reach southern Greenland in around 985, led by a guy named Eric the Red, for those of you who know him. During 500 years, they developed their culture down there. We have at the moment around, more actually now, more around 650 sites, and for the archaeologists among you, we have barns, stables, dwellings, etc., etc. And you have to keep in mind these people, although at the age of the known world at that time, they kept strong contacts with Northern Europe and the North Atlantic Islands. What is very interesting when I started working with these people is these remote resource regions. They have been exploited during these 500 years, and especially the North American coast, known as Markland in the sagas. So this Markland place is located in nowadays Newfoundland and Labrador provinces in Canada. So they went by boat from southern Greenland, following up the coast, and then down again along the North American shores. So for those of you who had the pleasure to go in Greenland, the least we can say is there is no wood. It's not entirely true, but let's say there is no wood. And in the North Atlantic Islands in general, trees and shrubs are pretty rare. You have this kind of a twisted, low and very slow-growing trees, and then that is why driftwood is especially important, and still nowadays for people living across the Arctic. For the Norse, also keep in mind importation of wood. We're talking about a connected North Atlantic island system, and so the sagas and a lot of historic sources tell us about importation of wood from Norway to South Greenland, for example. And for those of you who are not familiar with the driftwood system in the Arctic, the driftwood that is to be found in southern Greenland mostly comes from Siberia through drift ice, and then goes down the east coast and up the west coast again. And you can find them on the beaches like that. This is the kind of material I have the pleasure, I would say, to work with, because these are around 500 to 600 years old, and these are exactly the way you find them when you excavate the site in Greenland. And since we were talking about climate change and all these kind of things, it is a very big problem right now. Everything is melting super fast. So working in these places is also very important in terms of sustainability and preserving ancient culture. So I'm only working for my PhD on wooden containers that would include barrels, tubs, buckets, etc. Why? Because it includes both domestic artifacts and potentially imported, or at least commercial artifacts, as the barrels. These are the sites I've been working on in Greenland. They're all like Norse farms. You have a couple in the eastern settlements down there, here, and some around in the western settlement where the capital city Nuuk is currently located, right there. I have mainly been using wood taxa identification in my work to try and better understand what kind of wood these Norse people were using, following the basic wood taxa identification methodology. And these are the results I got recently. So what you can see, very interestingly, on the left side, you have sites from Northern Europe, as Lund in Sweden or York in the United Kingdom. And you can see they have been using oak almost consistently for making their barrels and stave-built vessels. When you move a little bit more into the North Atlantic, you can see here these sites are from Iceland, and this one, 34 here, is in South Greenland. But still, you can see there is a very big shift towards driftwood taxa, and oak is still pretty much important. And this is the only site I have in Greenland with wooden material made of oak. And those of you who know oak, you know it's impossible to miss it. So it was pretty easy to get these two. And these on the right side are all the other sites I've been working on in Greenland. And as you can see, there is no oak left, and it is almost entirely or entirely driftwood. Again, only for these stave-built containers. I'm not talking here about coffins or wooden materials used in houses, etc. But what we can see here, very interestingly, is a shift on the use of like local available sources, as the oak is, towards driftwood. When you look a bit more specifically into the Greenlandic sites, what you can see here is a difference between the eastern settlement, so the settlement which is like at the southern tip of the island. So it is also the settlement in which the Norse bishop was living. So you have here a settlement in which you have the bigger farms, the most powerful people living, and a little bit up north, the western settlement, which was much more turned towards the exploitation of marine resources, such as walrus, for example. And this shift here is present again with a few sites using native Greenlandic resources, which are these ones. And when you go up north, it's about 500 kilometers up north, you see like almost only driftwood species. And now I say driftwood or imported, and this is now the start of the talk I'm going to have about the isotopes, because we know wood taxa identification is great, but sometimes it's also not enough. And how am I supposed to make a difference between some spruce that has been growing in the Markland area or in the Northern Europe area, or spruce that has come as driftwood? Which is why I decided to start a provenancing project using isotopes. This is so the project, the name of the project here, founded by the World Wood Day Foundation, and we've been working with a lot of colleagues. And all what I'm going to tell you now, which is much more about chemical analysis, has been done by my colleague Sofia Pacheco-Flores at Arizona State University. So please, for those of you who are chemists, don't take it bad if I don't explain exactly the right genetic strontium. It's because it's not entirely my thing. Last summer, I've been sampling 4 sites in Greenland, 5 sites in Newfoundland and Labrador that you have here, and I sampled for strontium and oxygen and hydrogen isotopes. Strontium signatures are determined by the age and composition of underlying bedrock. It is abundant in nature and especially in the soil following erosion processes. Following these erosion processes, the strontium is taken into the plants, animals and humans as well, ingesting the plants. And because strontium isotopic signatures vary with geology, we can use these isotopes to trace the movement of wood, animals, or humans between different geologic zones. Hydrogen and oxygen are, as you know, the chemical elements that make water, and they can also vary depending the temperatures or climate of a specific environment, and they are hopefully going to be very helpful as complementary line of evidence to establish the provenance of wooden material. As I said, in previous studies have illustrated that radiogenetic strontium isotopes vary according to age and composition of bedrock, and this is just an example on the coast of Labrador. I have sampled this place here on the Quebecois border, L'Anse-au-Clair, and this here place, Maris Harbor. It's only like 2 hours driving, and you can see like very important differences in geologic composition. L'Anse-au-Clair is mainly composed of granite, dating back to the Proterozoic age, and versus Maris Harbor, mainly composed of sandstone and basalts formed in the Cambrian age, so about 1,000 million of years later. Each site was chosen according to two factors. First, the presence of a Norse archaeological site, and the idea there was to understand what is the isotopic signature of the surrounding of the site. So that would be the case of all the Greenlandic sites but one, and it is the case in Newfoundland at the site of Lancer Meadows, which is still nowadays the only Norse archaeological sites known in North America. The second places I have sampled are places that are in the Norse area, in their region of like the places that might have gone for fetching timber, and then the question there was what is the isotopic signature of places they might have visited. So that would be the places in Newfoundland and the coast of Labrador. Soil and plant samples have been run through the PrepFast system at ASU, which is an automated system that extracts the strontium of prepared sample matrices, and then the precise strontium signature is measured using a multi-collector coupled plasma mass spectrometer, which I don't exactly know how it's working, but like the few results we have recently, and I'm going to talk to you now, are pretty amazing. The water samples for oxygen and hydrogen isotopes have been sent to Northern Arizona University for analysis, and we don't have the results now, so I'm not going to be able to talk to you about it. These are the first results I got like 10 days ago, and this chart is pretty clear if you ask me, for a couple of reasons. Why? Because first, for you to know, 0.709, so just, that would be right there, that would be the radiogenetic strontium signature of the ocean, meaning a place which is getting closer to 0.709 is a place probably close to the water, which is great because like all these sites here, and even these guys here, we are talking about places close to the ocean, like directly on the shore or at the end of the fjord. So at least we have the first answer, which is I basically did well with my samples. Second thing is, and this is the most interesting thing so far, is even in the same region here of South Greenland, in the eastern settlements, you see like 3 of these sites have a signature which is almost the same, but this one here is a bit different. So hopefully when I will have more results and maybe after a couple more years of research, we will be able to actually make a difference between a piece of, let's say, birch that has been used from this site in Greenland and a piece of birch that comes from this site. So again, it is just like just the first results. They will be presented at the SAA meeting conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico next month. and there's going to be a paper soon. So if you want to know more about it, like, please stay tuned. But basically, what is very interesting here is for the first time we have a few data that can allow us, hopefully, to make a real difference between all these woods used by the Norse in southern Greenland. And I'm pretty confident we should be able soon to make a difference between wood that has been imported or wood which is a piece of driftwood. And talking about all the talks we had about illegal wood trade, we're not talking about illegal wood trade back in the Middle Ages here, but it's still the same global question of where the wood come from and how can we make the difference between the different species. And these are all the people I've been the pleasure to work with, so thank you very much.